All right, let's just jump right in with a big question. What if the most important ideas are the ones we're not even allowed to talk about? Today, we're diving into a philosophy that's literally built from the ground up on concepts that mainstream institutions have tried to suppress or just plain ignore. And look, this isn't just about thinking differently. We're talking about a whole worldview pieced together from the ruins of history that's been rejected.
And this quote, man, it just hits the nail on the head. You can think of it like an intellectual salvage mission. The entire goal is to dig up truths that our, over-ripened, maybe even decadent world has decided are too dangerous, too uncomfortable, or just inconvenient. It's all about recovering a kind of forbidden knowledge.
So this isn't some random collection of edgy ideas, right? It's a structured investigation. The whole point is to create a new map of reality, one that actually includes all the places the official mapmakers decided to leave out. And maybe the biggest territory they ignore is that uncomfortable, unavoidable truth of our own mortality, our own terminal existence.
As soon as you start this investigation, you run smack into a central conflict. You could call it a philosophical main event, really, between two powerful and totally opposing archetypes of what it even means to be human.
Okay, so here's the opposition laid bare. On one side, you have the red specter. This represents that painful but absolutely necessary struggle of creation and moving forward. It's that uncanny hook, that unsettling idea or drive that just pulls you right out of your comfort zone. And on the other side, we have the last man. He is the very picture of stagnation. He wants comfort, he wants safety, and he's guided by a spirit of contempt for anything that dares disrupt his cozy life.
Just look at the imagery here. It's so powerful. The difficult son of the high crags, that represents struggle, right? Striving, achieving something real. But the last man, he wants none of it. He and his community would much rather just huddle together down in the valley, clinging to a feeling of security that, frankly, they haven't actually earned through any hardship or risk.
So how does the last man even justify this kind of stagnation? Well, it's through what the source material calls slave morality. And this is a fascinating psychological flip. It's where the herd, the masses down in the valley, they just redefine strength, ambition, and that creative struggle as evil. Why? Simply because those qualities disturb their comfort and their sleep.
Now, this conflict doesn't just play out in society. Oh no, it escalates. It goes to a much higher, you could say, metaphysical level. What happens when the fundamental, terrifying truths of our existence, the abyss, are not just feared, but actively denied, hidden away?
And that question builds us right into our next duel. This is a battle for the soul itself, and it's fought between two figures who have radically different ways of dealing with the void.
Here, the contrast is just stark. You've got the sovereign, the architect of negation. This is someone who has stared directly into the abyss of meaninglessness and has decided his job is to tear down all the masks that we use to hide from it. And in direct opposition, you have Salvio Pallado, the guardian of the loophole. He denies the abyss even exists. He uses dogma, absolute law, to create this polished, safe reality, one that protects the powerful, sure, but really just masks a deep, deep spiritual stagnation.
Ultimately, this whole conflict boils down to a clash between the Pharisees' paradox, which is like a hollow, self-righteous performance, and what's called the honest currency of the terminal shudder. That shudder, that's the raw, undeniable, authentic experience of confronting our own mortality. It's the one truth you can't mask or explain away with any dogma.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds very abstract, but this philosophy argues that these battles have happened before, throughout history. Its mission is to unearth figures who were buried by mainstream stories precisely because they represented these forbidden ideas. Just think about these two. You have Apollonius of Tyana, a philosopher whose spiritual teachings could have rivaled others, but he was dismissed as just a sorcerer. Then you have Apollonius of Perga, a geometer whose work on unsettling concepts like the fractal infinite was actually censored. Both of them were pushed into the shadowlands of history because they explored truths that made the powers that be very, very uncomfortable.
So why suppress them? What was the motive? It's because these so-called shadow saviors were a threat to the established order. Their knowledge pointed to a far more complex and frankly more terrifying reality about mortality and the universe. A reality that the dominant institutions just wanted to simplify, control, or hide completely.
So, okay, we've got the conflict, we've got the archetypes, and we've got the historical precedent. But what's the ultimate point of all this forbidden philosophy? What is the journey it's actually prescribing? The answer really lies in this concept called active nihilism. Now, this is not passive despair or just believing that nothing matters. Not at all. This is the core philosophy of the sovereign. He actively works to dismantle all the hollow structures and false meanings that society uses to paper over the void.
So this philosophy proposes something like an inverted hero's journey. You don't find a treasure, instead you reject the sanctuary of comfort. You don't gain power, you steal the meaning from things to reveal their emptiness. And the climax? It isn't saving the world, it's facing the great noon, a destructive moment that completely clears the slate, paving the way for something entirely new to grow from the ruins.
This journey of destruction, this pilgrimage of the plague, is actually presented as a necessary failure. It's the collapse of the old world that is absolutely required before any real true transformation can even begin.
And in the end, this entire architecture of forbidden ideas, it leads us to one final, really provocative question. In our endless quest for comfort, for safety, and for the denial of the abyss, has our civilization forgotten a fundamental part of existence? How to face the end with honesty? That's a challenging thought to leave you with.